Welcome back to R6 Esports Insider. In today's video, we're going to do a recap of the 2024 SI playoffs. I will get into the grand final and all the craziness of the main stage, but I do want to highlight some things from the early playoff games because there was some great siege there. So you're just here for the grand final, head to the end of the video. The first set of games of day 1 of the playoffs were W7M vs Wolves, FaZe vs Los, DZ vs Liquid, and NIP vs Fury. Obviously, the highlight game here was W7M vs Wolves. This game was definitely one of the best games of the entire tournament with a 2-1 upset win for Wolves and to put the two-time major champs in the lower bracket. The other 3 games were just solid games with FaZe having a solid 2-1 win over the struggling Los, DZ having a convincing 2-0 win over Liquid, who just couldn't figure it out this event, and NIP having a 2-1 comeback win over Fury, who did get the first map. The next set of games for day 1 were Sonics vs Wolves, G2 vs FaZe, SSG vs DZ, and Virtus.pro vs NIP. The highlight game here was the trash-talking affair between SSG and Dark Zero. This game was a battle between 2 top NA teams, but Dark Zero ultimately was too much for SSG in the end, as they took the game 2-1 against SSG. G2 vs FaZe was also a great game, especially map 1 on Cafe, which went all the way to 7-7 with G2 taking FaZe's map pick. But FaZe just elevated their game after that and took both map 2 and 3 convincingly. The overrated Sonics beat down a very exhausted Wolves team who just played a grueling game against W7M earlier that day, so Sonics again had an easy opponent. The last game of the day was VP versus NIP, which was just another showcase that NIP can't beat a top contender at this tournament. All of these games, by the way, were upper bracket games, so no teams got eliminated yet. Day 2 was nothing but lower bracket games, with the first set of games being W7M vs Furex, Los vs Bleed, Liquid vs Falcons, and Fury vs Bliss. First off, all of these games except Fury vs Bliss were pretty much dominant affairs, with them all being 2-0s, and in Liquid vs Falcons, the first map was a 7-0, so just dominant siege in these games. The next set of games from day 2 were actually some really good games, with the games being NIP vs W7M, SSG vs Bleed, G2 vs Liquid, and Wolves vs Bliss. The best game out of this set of games was definitely Wolves vs Bliss. It was the only 2-1 of these 4 games, but it was just amazing play by Bliss that made this game into a great one. Wolves took Bliss's map pick pretty convincingly, so it looked like Bliss was going to get knocked out. But Bliss woke up on Wolves' map pick and stole it with amazing Monty plays from Fisho Guy. And on map 3, Bliss completes the comeback and upset win over Wolves to push them to top 8. And like I said in my group stage recap video, I said watch out for Bliss because they are dark horse for top 8. And for Wolves, they have another devastating finish. The other 3 games were very good, with SSG vs Bleed being a 2-0, but both maps were very good maps, with Clubhouse being a back and forth 7-5. And Chalet was an amazing map, with SSG coming back from a 6-3 deficit with winning 5 rounds in a row to win it 8-6 to knock out Bleed from the tournament. NIP vs W7M started out with a 7-3 on Bank, so it really looked like an easy 2-0 win for W7M. But NIP looked really good on Cafe, but it wasn't enough as the Bulls barely scraped by with an 8-7 win and an overall 2-0 win, and with that loss, NIP's tournament was cut short. The G2 vs Liquid game was pretty convincing by G2, with them winning 7-4 on both Oregon and Consulate, and with that, Liquid had another disappointing exit from SI. Day 3 was the last day before main stage, and this day didn't disappoint, with matches between Sonics and FaZe, Dark Zero vs Virtus.pro, SSG vs W7M, and G2 vs Bliss. And in my opinion, all of these games should have been all on the main stage. But the highlight game was definitely DZ vs VP. I sadly missed this game, but this definitely had some of the best plays in the entire tournament, and every map was very competitive, with both the first and second maps being 7-5s, and the final map being an 8-7, and at 6-5 always clutches a 1v3 to push it to overtime and to their eventual win over DZ. SSG vs W7M was another good game from day 3, with W7M winning Clubhouse in convincing fashion, but SSG bounced back on Cafe with amazing plays to win 8-6 and to push it to a map 3. But W7M was just too much for the NA squad as the Bulls win Chalet 7-3 as they knock out SSG. Sonics vs FaZe was exactly what I thought this game would be, and that was a dominant win by FaZe. And Sonics proves yet again that they are always the most overrated team going into these events. I did think that G2 vs Bliss would have been more of a tighter matchup, but Bliss's magic ran out as they got 2-0'd, and G2 proves that they are still a top contender. The first game of the main stage was G2 versus Dark Zero, and I thought this game would be a lot closer or fair, but once G2 got momentum, they just took over with map 1. G2 started out fast with an early 2-0 lead, but DZ bounced back with 5 rounds in a row to push their lead to 5-2, but G2 woke up and won 5 rounds of their own to win the map 7-5. And on map 2, it wasn't much of a competition with a 7-3 win by G2 and an eventual 2-0 win by them to push themselves further into the lower bracket. The second game of the main stage was W7M versus Sonics, and man, this wasn't even close, with Sonics only getting a total of 5 rounds and 2 maps. I think some people would say that it was the crowd or that W7M is too good, but in my opinion, Sonics finally played a good team and they got exposed. And after that loss, Sonics was eliminated from the event. The last match of the first day of main stage was FaZe versus Virtus.pro. I was really excited to see this matchup, but it was just another letdown with the dominant win from FaZe, with them winning the first map 7-3 and the second map 7-4. I think the crowd got to VP and caused them to not play at the top of their game, but with FaZe's win, they moved on to the grand final, and with VP's loss, they had to wait for the result of W7M and G2. The match to start off the next day of main stage was G2 versus W7M. The rematch from last year's SI Grand Final was thought to be one of the best matches of the event, but man, what a disappointment this match was, with W7M dominating yet another game, and this time their opponent only got a total of 4 rounds and 2 maps, which is absolutely insane. And with that, the world champions were topped. This past year, though, was a letdown for G2, with them getting knocked out by a Brazilian team in every event, and twice by W7M. So G2 has to figure out how to get past that hump and fast. W7M vs VP was the game to determine who was going to play FaZe in the grand final, and this rematch from groups did not disappoint. After the first map, W7M looked like they were going to run away with yet another game and propelled themselves into the grand final. But VP had other plans as they took Chalet 7-4 to push it to a map 3, and that's where this game went absolutely bonkers. Border started off with W7M and VP going blow for blow, but after 7 rounds, W7M had the lead 4-3. The VP won 3 rounds in a row to push it to map and series point, and when you thought this game was over, W7M gets 2 rounds in a row to push it to overtime. In the first overtime round, Joystick pulled off an amazing ace to put it at map and series point again for Virtus.pro, but W7M wins yet another round to put it to 7-7 to determine who moves on and who goes home. And W7M pulls it off with a dominant round win to put themselves in yet another grand final and to cap off one of the best games in SI history. Before I get into the grand final, I have to talk about the crowd in Sao Paulo. I mean, what a crowd. This crowd was definitely the best one we've ever seen in CG Sports. It was like a football game out there with the constant noise and chants. I mean, just listen to this. I've never seen a crowd affect the game that much before. I just want to thank those fans for bringing the energy and passion to R6 Esports, and I hope we have more fans like that in future events. This grand final without a doubt had the 2 best teams in the tournament, and this game showed us why. The first map was a surprising 7-1 from FaZe, as it looked like W7M was either lost or they were conserving their energy for the rest of the series. But they bounced back on Bank with some great plays from Herds and others to win the map 7-5. On Skyscraper, W7M started out hot on their defense with a 5-1 half, but FaZe came storming back to win 6-0 on their defense and to win 7 rounds in a row altogether to get themselves to 1 map away from winning SI. On map 4, W7M started out really strong with winning 4 rounds to start off Border, and in those 4 rounds, Nade clutched an amazing 1v3, but FaZe snuck in 2 rounds before the end of the half. But W7M quickly won 2 rounds after that to push themselves 1 round away from map 5. But FaZe started to make a comeback and pushed it to 6-4, but Keezy had other plans and dropped a nasty 3k to push it to Nighthaven Labs. On map 5, FaZe started out on fire, and W7M just looked like they ran out of gas as it was 6-1 in favor of FaZe. And it looked like W7M was going to lose yet another grand final, but they won a second round, and another, and another, and another as the crowd was getting louder and louder after every round win. and W7M pushed it to overtime, and after they got it to overtime, they weren't going to let it go, and W7M won 2 rounds in OT to complete the greatest comeback in the history of Siege Esports, and to cap off the greatest Siege game ever to win the 2024 Six Invitational. I mean, this game had everything from the amazing plays, the call from the casters, and the amazing crowd and atmosphere. This game will definitely go into the Siege record books as one of the greatest games ever played. I also want to show you guys the call by Guz, Xenox, and Pengu because it was an amazing call by them for the last play of SI. I just really wanted y'all to check it out.
W7M have to wait for their moment. It's all directed to them. No! 3 versus 1! Is this the moment where we can crown a new champion, a new dynasty to be created? And yes, we will! Yes, we will! Trophies, and now a hammer. They cement themselves as one of the greatest of all time.
This event was so huge for Siege Esports. We had the best game we've ever had in the esport, with some of the best storylines and moments. We had the best crowd we ever had, and we had the most viewers we ever had in any Siege event ever, with over 500,000. Also, we had a great Year 9 reveal with a lot of amazing changes for the game. This event showed what R6 Esports could and should be, and I'm so excited to see the future for R6 Esports. I will be doing a full roster mania video once all the roster moves are confirmed. I just want to thank y'all for watching, and if you want more R6 Esports content, subscribe and follow my Twitter. God bless.
We'll be right back.